Hello, YouTube land, and welcome to Force In Unison Live. Today is gonna be a special night because we're talking about the Xbox One X and all its power. Do you feel powerful? I do, baby, because I'm ready to talk about this beautiful system. Of course, we have a special guest tonight to discuss it. Because trust me, I don't know shit about Xbox, but we do bring the right people to talk about Xbox. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, 7 people. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, baby. Force In Unison Live. How you doing, Caliones?
Hey, how you doing, Dantes? How you doing, everybody? And yeah, I just wanted to welcome, a friend of ours. Depending on how he wants to be called, if Scott or AMD Boomer, we'll decide on one of those two. So he is one of the Microsoft preview members. So he's able to get like different programs or applications, updates, games and things like that. So he does have early access to some of those things. But in this case, he is a proud owner of an Xbox One X. He has been trying a couple of games, and we're bringing him over so he can talk about his experience so far with the system and if it's worth it. So, Scott or AMD Boomer, which one do you prefer?
You just call me Boomer. That'll work.
Okay, Boomer. Okay, so today you finally received the Xbox One X, and
wait, you have to do the rigmarole. Come on,
okay,
man.
you're
ready to rock and roll, and you don't give time for the rigmarole. What's going on, Caliones? You know the flow. You know how these things work. Come on, man.
I just want to know. I'm excited to know about the system.
I know you're hard and heavy. You probably want to know about those enhancements that the Xbox One X is giving away. But it's all good. I mean, we understand you want to enhance yourself with the power of the Xbox One X. But let's do quickly a rigmarole. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in Force In Unison Live, episode 11. I think it is. My bad.
11.
It is messed up today. I had a hard day at work. I barely got in here in time. But we're here, and we're happy to have a little bit of fun. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment so you can make these two crazy MFs happy. Also, remember, we do have a Nintendo podcast called the Get In and Get Out Nintendo Podcast every Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you don't want to see ugly faces, it's all good, baby. We got a solution for you. Go to SoundCloud and iTunes and download this podcast for free. Rate us over there so you can show us some love. And finally, and Dantes says finally, go to chiguerosnews.com and give some click and love to my boy Caliones. With all that said, take it away, Caliones.
Okay, so like I said, we have Boomer visiting us today, not in flesh, but in digital and audio waves through the system. So how you doing, Boomer?
I'm doing good. How are you guys tonight?
We're doing great. Well, earlier today I actually saw the Thor Ragnarok movie, so that's something we're going to talk about later on. Not during the podcast, okay? But yeah, there's a lot to talk about that one. But I just wanted to ask you. So you went today. You got the system. How does it feel to finally have it home?
It's about time, hearing it since last year at E3 2016. It's been a long wait. And then there was the wait this year after they showed the actual hardware, waiting for the pre-orders. That was a bit of a tax there, just checking each day. Were they open for pre-orders yet? So I was able to get me one of the Scorpio editions and picked it up today at Best Buy and rushed it back home and got it hooked up, easy peasy.
Okay, so tell us about the Scorpio edition. What's different about that version when compared to the other ones?
Instead of it being a solid black matte finish, it has a gradient coloring to it. It starts kind of black at the top and then slowly fades to kind of a gray, but it also has a texture to it where it feels like it has like tiny little dots across it. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's actually pretty cool, and it does have the Project Scorpio logo on both the system and the controller. I know some people weren't too keen on it being in the middle of the controller, but I don't have any problems with it. I mean, are you going to stare at your controller while you play a game? So I don't have a problem with it, and I think it's fine. But yeah, so
Yeah.
finally got the system.
Yeah, and I would say, based on consumers, they actually did say, and they spoke with their wallets when they said that they don't want to look at their controllers when they're playing a game if you base it on Wii U sales. So yeah, that's probably not going to happen again. But going over to the Xbox itself, is it bigger, smaller? Because you do have the PS4 Pro, correct?
Yeah, I have the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One S.
Okay, and how does the system compare to those other ones?
It's actually smaller than the PS4 Pro, and it's only a hair smaller than the Xbox One S. If you stand them side by side, it looks like it's taller than the S, but actually depth and height, not taller, I would say, wider. It's slightly wider, but height-wise, if it's laying horizontal, it's actually smaller than the S. So overall, it is a little bit smaller system, but you really can't tell too much on that. But for the Pro, oh yeah, I went ahead and I set it on the Pro before I hook it up just to compare the sizes. And if the Pro could open up, it could swallow this unit almost. So it's a big difference in size.
Yeah, because that was one of the biggest complaints about the Pro is, I guess the sheer size and how much bigger it is compared to the PS4 and the slim version of it. So I know that when it comes to the Xbox brand, it does have. I mean, I'll say it's an understatement that it does have a hard time selling in somewhere like Japan, for example.
Oh,
so
yeah.
hopefully by having it be smaller, it'll be something that they can have in the living room and be part of all the other appliances that they have. So we'll see how that works out. But okay, so you have the system, you set it up, you played some games. So going with the questions that I had here. So what is your assessment of the Xbox One X now that you have it and played with it?
So far, I've been satisfied with it. I haven't played all my enhanced games. I'm waiting until I get my vacation next week to get in depth on some of the ones that had the biggest enhancements, like Tomb Raider and such. So I don't have anything on it just yet. But I did play Halo 5, Gears of War 4, Madden 18, Live 18,
Okay.
and then some other ones I just loaded up to look at just to see Paladins, Diablo 3. And then for some back compat games, I loaded up Gears of War 3, Mirror's Edge, and actually Skate 3. I forgot I had loaded that up. But as far as games, I would say Halo 5 is so far been the most impressive. Okay. It really looks like it was meant to be 4K. I don't think they really had to do any texture work or not much at all, but just the detail of the game and solid 60 frames per second. That's another thing is, even though Halo 5 was already 60 frames per second, it did have its moments where it would, dip. Even with that dynamic resolution, it struggled sometimes to keep that solid 60. I didn't have any issues with that playing the enhanced version. It looked phenomenal, played great. And one thing that I noticed, latency. It seemed like that since the frame rate was more solid, the input latency seemed to be even better. Maybe that's a placebo effect. I don't know, but it just seemed that way to me.
Okay, so you're saying that that you feel like the game was meant to be like that, but in many ways it is, and for some first-party titles for Microsoft, it is meant to be. So how would you explain that? Like, what has Microsoft done on some of their games to have it ready for the Xbox One X?
So here's the thing. I believe me and you had this conversation when the Scorpio was announced last year in 2016. Yes. I made the comment that Microsoft had the foresight they were the first ones to do dynamic resolution. Halo 5, I believe, was the first. I could be wrong, but I believe Halo 5 was the first console game of this gen that had a dynamic resolution. And I made the comment that they probably did that so that it could play in 4K whenever the Scorpio comes out. And then you notice more and more games started using the dynamic resolution. So I believe the assets that they had already put in place, the artwork and everything, there was some forethought put into it, because they actually started making Scorpio as soon as they started making the S. They knew the S was going to be that small stopgap, and then later on they would have the Scorpio. That's how I see it, as far as how it was developed. It just seems like they knew that this was going to happen a couple of years down the line.
Okay. And when it comes to feature-wise, can we expect any enhanced features or anything else from the Xbox One X in comparison to the S or the original Xbox?
The only thing is, physically, I wouldn't really say that there's much physically different. I do like how it pulls the air in from the sides and there's no vent holes on the top. So if you're like me, prone to place a controller or a game on top every once in a while when you're swapping them out, you don't have to worry about covering vent holes. So something like that, physically, I don't think there's anything to expect. As far as software-wise, the one thing that they did is they were going to go with a 4K UI, but they decided not to because they wanted to give an extra gig of RAM to developers. So they stuck with a 1080p user interface, but it still looks just fine. It looked fine on the One and the One S. So it doesn't really detract from anything there. So that's one thing. If somebody's going in thinking they're going to get like a 4K user interface, it's not going to be there. But don't worry, the 1080p is fine. One thing that they will notice is that the user interface is even more snappier now with the extra power of the X. Navigating the store and through the menus and such is a lot faster and smoother. It was already a little bit better with the Fluent design that they just released, but with the X, you can tell that extra horsepower is being used all the time, basically. So everything just seems snappier and just quicker to respond.
Okay, so have you already played some games? You played Xbox One games. Have you played any Xbox 360 games? And if you have, how are they looking?
Yeah, like I said, I had tested out Mirror's Edge, Gears of War 3, and Skate 3. And actually, it looks like they just added BioShock 2, Gears of War Judgment, and the Half-Life Orange Box to the list. I've got some new updates for that. But anyways, that's besides the point. Gears of War 3, it looks great. It's an Unreal Engine 3 game, so it already looked great on the 360. But it really did have a lot of detail that was always there. I haven't had a chance to test Halo 3, but it seems like the detail was always there. And this is a good case of where, if you think about like Nintendo games, when they get that high resolution treatment, it really shows off that artwork that was originally there. So I was really impressed with Gears of War 3 and how it looked. Mirror's Edge, it actually has HDR as well as the 4K resolution, and it just it almost looks as good as the new Mirror Edge. You would think that it's a next gen title. It really can compete with the PC version. So if somebody was to take the PC version of Mirror's Edge and compare it to this one, it's going to be hard to tell them apart. The shadows are a little bit different, but if you just look at everything else, you would think that somebody was playing the PC version on a high-end rig. Skate 3, very clean, very responsive, but I don't think it had a lot of detail to begin with. So I don't think people are going to be quite as impressed with Skate 3 as they probably would like to be, especially seeing as how Tony Hawk 5 was kind of a letdown this generation. But it's still good. It's good, but it's just not going to be that leap that maybe they're going to expect, like they're going to get with Gears of War 3 and Mirror's Edge.
Okay, so we have now we have the Xbox One X, we have the PS4 Pro out. So for what would you say for the people that are struggling to decide between the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, what would you say to them to persuade them into getting the Xbox One X instead?
All right, so I look at it from a few different perspectives. If you're still stuck on a PS3 or a 360 and you haven't upgraded to this gen yet, I say go with an Xbox One X if you haven't jumped into this generation. If you're currently a PS4 or Xbox One player, Xbox One player, I think it's a great upgrade because it's not technically a new generation, and all your games are going to play exactly like they do now or better. So you don't have to worry about buying all new stuff. And then for PlayStation users, obviously you can't carry your games over because it's a different system. So I would only suggest it to a PlayStation user if it's someone that only plays multi-platforms. Now, both systems do have their exclusive games. Obviously, PlayStation's got the exclusives this year coming out, the bigger name exclusives. But if you're mainly a multi-platformer, someone that does online gaming for like competitive, like Call of Duty or something like that, I would definitely say this is the system you want to go with instead of the PS4 Pro. Now, I do have the PS4 Pro, and what's kind of sad, in my opinion, is the best two examples I've seen of its power is from Hot Shots Golf, or Everybody's Golf as it is now, and Ratchet and Clank. Those have been the two best examples I've seen. Now, I still need to try Horizon Zero Dawn, so that may actually change, and that may be the one that
I was gonna step in here
yeah.
because Horizon Zero Dawn looks freaking awesome on the PS Pro. Hellblade looks freaking awesome on the PS4. There's many games. I had to come in here, you know what I'm saying? Defend my boys in Sony. No, go ahead, Scott. I'm just messing around.
Yeah, no. But you're right. No, I haven't tested everything out, but those to me so far have taken the most advantage of it. I was kind of disappointed in Lawbreakers, not in the gameplay. We already know about the gameplay and how it's generic, but it was supposed to have the, it's not 4K. I think it's like 1440p, and it wasn't as impressive as I thought it was going to be. Uncharted, obviously I didn't expect Uncharted 4 to be 4K, but Uncharted 4 does look good. So I do have to say it did look good on the Pro.
And Lost Legacy also. So if you haven't played Lost Legacy, I would recommend it for sure this year.
But out of the games I played that had some kind of HDR implementation or super sampling or 4K, those two titles, believe it or not, Ratchet and Clank and Everybody's Golf were great. But I do have Horizon Zero Dawn. It was on sale this week for $27.99, or I think it was last week. Anyways, I did go ahead and buy it digitally because that is going to be the next thing I do play on the Pro. And then maybe we'll come back and we'll reassess, what I think has been the best for my experience. That is on the PlayStation. But back to the point that I was making. If you are a PS4 player and those Sony branded exclusives, if that's why you're a PlayStation gamer, you need to stick with the Pro. If you can afford to own both systems, then I would say stick with the PS4 for the exclusives and get the X1X for the multiplats, if that's something you can do. And if it's not, and you can just only own one system at a time or one ecosystem, I would say stay with the PS4 if that's what your main draw is those Sony branded exclusives. Otherwise, if it's the MS exclusives or just multi-plats, the X is where you want to go. You can't get a high-end PC to give you this level of performance. I know I sound like an MS spokesman, but if you go and you look at the YouTube videos from some of the larger sites like Linus Tech Tips and a couple other ones, they've tried to build a comparable equivalent, but they can't hit that $500 mark. I think the closest someone has gotten is maybe $700 or $800. So it's definitely good in that respect.
Yeah, and Boomer, and since you're actually going down that path when comparison with the the Xbox One X and the PC, we do had one person on the live chat, PSV Xbox. He did state that the Xbox One X looks good, but he has a nice PC, so he doesn't need the X. So you were talking about
Yeah, if you've already got a high-end PC, why would you replace a high-end PC with this console? If you don't have an high-end PC and you can't afford to build a high-end PC, then I think this is a very good alternative for you, especially if you do play these multiplats that are also on PC, like Call of Duty World War II, Battlefield, Battlefront, those kind of games. If you play those games and you can't afford that $800 to $1,000 high-end PC, then this is a good alternative. If you already own one of those, then there's absolutely no reason for you to switch over to a console.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, I say there's still games that PC can handle as well as consoles. Yeah, for example, Batman Arkham Knight. So I mean, there's there's always going to be a need for consoles, because no PC can run that one. But yeah, Dantes, do you have anything else for Boomer?
Yeah, all the PC gamers are gonna come after you, Caliones, and kick your ass. You can say comments like that, dude. Come on, PC master race. Here's what we're talking about: 60 frames per second. That's what matters. Anyway, no, I just have a quick question for Scott. Their previews have come down from the Xbox, and there have been some games that have been struggling to hit the 60 frames marks. And for me, my expectations, I also have a strong PC. It is not as strong as the X, I'll admit. It won't play 4K 60 frames, but it does play most of it out there 1080p 60 frames. And to me, frames per second is more critical than resolution. That's always, I'm going to say that. And
Microsoft knows that, and that's why with Gears of War 4, campaign was always 30 frames and multiplayer was always 60 frames. So what they've done is they've put in a performance mode. Same with Tomb Raider. I haven't tried Tomb Raider yet, but they do have a performance mode where you can do 1080p 60, and it hits at about 95% of the time, the 60 frames per second. That bottleneck is still going to be there for those larger open type games, but there are some 4K 60 games on the on there. Obviously, there's Forza. We know that. There's Killer Instinct. Like I mentioned, Halo 5 is 4K 60. And I didn't mention this about Madden. Madden runs at 60 frames, it seems, all the time now, whereas before, it didn't always run at 60 frames. I don't know if you guys play Madden. I don't know if you played it at all, but you may have noticed sometimes when they would do the cuts to the coaches, it would look like the coaches were sped up, but it was actually those cutscenes were running in 60 frames, but then when it would switch back to the action on the field, it'd be 30 frames. So they did fix that. So I agree with you. 60 frames should always be there as an option. And I think more developers should definitely do that. They should give you the option of maybe 4K 30 or 1080 60 going forward, because some games, platform games, I'm running off the rails here, but platform games are definitely always going to be ones that you need to have that good frame rate. And the first person shooters, if they can't hit 4K 60, I'll take 1080 60 all the time if that's what you have to go with. That's like you said, PC. That's why a lot of them like the 60 frames. It gives them a competitive edge when they're playing competitive if they've got that high frame rate.
And that's why I was a little bit disappointed in Ratchet and Clank Clank, even though the Pro patch came in, it's still 30 frames. I was waiting for that 60. And I'm going to give a weak console like the Switch some props because they just came out with one of the best games this year, Mario Odyssey. But in that game, even though it's only 900p, it's 60 frames consistently. It hits it like 95% of the time. Dunk City is one of the areas that it does drops in frames. But just running in 60 consistently, I was so happy. It looked so great running and jumping with Mario. So I expected the same from the Pro. Give me the option with that little bit more power to go to 60, and I can pick my resolution myself. That's what I like about PC. I can play any game in PC, change my settings, but I always make sure that I hit that magic mark 60. And that's where I wish the Xbox One X will give you that at some point. Microsoft could have a big winner here if maybe they give some more customization, and the developers too, of course, because it comes down to the developers, of course, where you can give you those options.
Yes, and that's what they said all along. Developers, do whatever you want to do. If you want to do bells and whistles and frame rate, go for that. If you want to do resolution, go for that. So it is up to the developers, and I think more of them need to do that. This way there can't be any complaints. People can play the game however they want.
Agreed. I guess the other question, you brought up the design of the X and how they made a small console so nice looking. It's even smaller than the Pro, right? Which again, being more powerful, I'm surprised. Do you feel with the X being nicer looking, would you, because one of the areas, and I'm not talking about Japan, I'm gonna go worldwide. One of the areas that Microsoft does struggle is worldwide, right? Sony always wins worldwide. Do you think the new design would attract other markets, not only Japan? I'm talking more, China, Europe, which again is kind of Sony country. Areas like that.
Well, they had already released in China, what was it, 2 years ago, I think it was, and they did sell like 1 million regular Xbox Ones. I don't know that the design itself is really going to bring a lot of people on board. I think for China specifically, and we'll just talk China specifically, then we'll talk the rest of the world. I think PUBG, because it's poorly optimized on PC and it will be better optimized on the X, I think they'll be more apt to buy a console to play it because they'll have a solid experience and they don't have to worry about configuration and such. So I think you may see some sales bump, not a lot, when that does get released for preview. As far as the rest of the world, it is a $500 console. They constantly stated it's a premium system. Do I think it's going to sell extremely well in other territories? I don't know. I mean, I would expect a small percentage will go out and upgrade, and maybe some that were on the fence will go out and get it. But I still, for the time being, see the regular PS4, not even the Pro, because the Pro's not a huge seller. I see the regular PS4 still being the dominant system in those territories, and the Switch is knocking it out of the park right now in Japan. I think it's actually, if it hasn't already, I think it will overtake PS4 sales in Japan soon, if not early next year. Because it's just that if the Wii U had only been what the Switch is, right now you may see Nintendo may be the one with 60 million units, and then Sony, and then Microsoft behind, if it had been that, 4 years ago. But I digress. It'll help some, not a lot. I don't expect any changes in Japan. Japan is very adverse to American companies unless your name is Apple. They don't really buy a lot of American products other than Apple, to be honest. So I don't see a big change there. It would be nice if it happened, but I just don't see it.
Okay, and I want to merge a news that is coming around too, that we're hearing that Microsoft is thinking about becoming even more services and more, even putting their games in other platforms. So I guess my question is, you think that messaging that comes out, mostly for the hardcore, I'm not going to say the casual, because the casual doesn't care about the gaming news, but for the hardcore, giving that mixed messaging, could it hurt the X? Because some people would be hearing that maybe on the fence, that they're a Sony fan or a Nintendo fan, and like, I want to buy the X, but I keep hearing that Microsoft may drop their games in other platforms? Should I wait?
Yeah, if you read the article, they're misquoting Phil Spencer. He's basically alluding to games like Minecraft. That's what he's really talking about. I don't see them putting Halo or Gears of War or anything like that on competitors' systems unless they decide to bow out of the hardware market. I don't see that happening. If they come up with a game similar to Minecraft that they know could be $1 billion franchise across multi-platforms, then I could see something like that. But I don't see the flagships franchises being on other systems. Now, I do think they will expand more into Steam. I think they probably will look at day and date, with the Play Anywhere with Windows 10 and Xbox, and then maybe like 6 months to a year later, put it on Steam to get those extra sales. And I think, that's something they would be okay with, because in their mind, it's still on Windows, which is in theory a Microsoft platform. To them, that's how they could spin the PR. But as far as putting it on Switch or PlayStation, I don't see that happening anytime soon with flagship franchises.
Okay. But I was saying, like something that we also we actually talked about a couple of times before, and it's that like in Japan, Microsoft really doesn't sell systems, and if they don't sell systems, they cannot sell games. It doesn't matter how great the games are if nobody's buying the systems. They're not buying the games. But we've talked about they may be able to do some work out something with maybe not so necessarily with Sony, but maybe with Nintendo, about featuring some of the Microsoft games on a Nintendo system in Japan only, and not anywhere else. So do you foresee something like that happening?
I could see, we talked about this once before, and I think you had brought up some of the Rare games. I could see something like Banjo-Kazooie being lent out to Nintendo and put on those platforms, because I think that kind of stuff would make sense. As much as we all love Banjo-Kazooie, and it's Microsoft-owned IP because they own Rare, people are always going to view it as a Nintendo franchise, even though Microsoft owns it now. So I think they would be okay with something along those lines being put on the Switch. And if they can get more cross network play, like it's going to happen with Rocket League, Minecraft, and what's the other game that's currently in Kickstarter that's like a battle royale game?
Yeah, Crazy Justice.
Crazy Justice. If those games can be successful, and they see that there's a lot of interactivity between Switch, Xbox, and PC users, then I could see them investing more in those cross-platform games, while Sony's left out in the wind. I'm sure you guys have researched and found out what Sony's reasoning is for why they don't allow cross-network play. They feel that if I want to play against you in Rocket League and you're on a PlayStation, it doesn't matter if I'm on Xbox or Switch or PC. They want me to go out and buy a PlayStation just to play with you. That's their reasoning for not allowing cross-platforming. They don't feel that they have any obligation to their users to allow it. If you want to play together, you got to go buy another PlayStation. And while I don't like that, I can completely understand their point of view. They're out there to sell systems, which will sell games. So even though I don't like that that point of view, I totally understand where they're coming from.
I will say this. I will say this, that always the number one console is the one that is the most anti-consumer. So last gen, it was Sony who wanted to do cross-platform play with Xbox, and Xbox was saying no because of the same reasoning. And it's just that the things are reversed. Now, this gen, Microsoft, after the Xbox One, I guess, launched the debacle of the original one, they've been honestly the most consumer-friendly compared to Sony after everything. And that's what's good about competition, right? When you're trailing, you'll do whatever it takes to come back.
Oh, yeah.
And the same can be said about Nintendo now, trying to there's still Nintendo does still need to improve in some areas, like letting people stream. You hear me? That Nintendo, come on, man, that's free advertisement. But yeah, I agree with that. I think that Sony's reasoning is understandable. I don't agree with it as a consumer. I am 100% with the peeps. We need to have cross-platform play. Everybody can play together because that extends the life of a multiplayer game. Pure and simple. Maybe games like Lawbreaker could last maybe 2 weeks more. But
oh man, Lawbreakers. It's not that terrible, but the PlayStation community now has gotten so bad. It took me 8 minutes the other day to get into a match. So now they're actually mixing all the regions. They're mixing all the regions. So you may play with people from East Coast, West Coast, and Europe now, just so that they can fill your queue. Yeah. So, but hey, it is what it is.
No, I agree, but yeah, hopefully Sony will come around. But maybe next gen, if like Xbox or Nintendo's the one kicking ass, Sony then will. Oh yeah, let's do cross-platform play. Yeah, you know how it is.
That's right. Tables turn.
That is correct. We'll see what happens.
Okay, well, so I guess we pretty much covered when it comes to the Xbox One X preview or talking about the system itself. Is there anything else that you want to say about the system, Boomer?
I just wish they would have had more patches available on day one. I mean, I know they had like 70 available, but I wish they had, quite a few more out there. There's some games out there that I think could get some second life with a patch. Like Sunset Overdrive, I was playing it earlier, just, to test it out. Obviously, it's still stuck at 900p because it hasn't been patched. And it's also 30 frames, but it does play smoother. It's a locked 30 frames on the X. I think that it could get a second life if it got a patch and was put out there for people to play it, in maybe 1080 60 or 4K 30. Because I know Insomniac said that they would like to make Sunset Overdrive 2. They said they just need a publisher. So if MS would do that, and show that there's interest from their fan base in the IP still, they would publish the game. So I wish that would happen.
Yeah, and we're gonna see. I mean, we're gonna see an example like that if it does happen with a game like Recore, because Recore is receiving the enhancements. So we'll see how that actually turns out and how the game sells after those updates.
But quick question to end, because I would like to ask this to Scott, I guess, is so you think Microsoft would give Sunset Overdrive a chance? Because it seems like Microsoft, to them, have got burned this gen with first single-player games. Quantum Break did not sell as they expected. Sunset Overdrive did not sell as they expected. Record did not sell as they expected. So do you think Microsoft is just completely moving away from single-player experiences?
I know Phil had made a comment that people misstrued. I think that they moved a little bit away, but I think that they will come back to it. I understand the whole games as a service, but you still got to have those single player experiences. I mean, look at the vast majority of what Sony has coming out. God of War.
That's me every day at the house. God of War. Yes, go
ahead. Single player. The Spider-Man game. Single player. Horizon Zero Dawn. Single player. Lost Legacy. Single player. They sell. And it's not just because they got 60 million units. Even if they only had 30 million PlayStations out there, they would still sell those games in the millions. Single player games are out there. You just need to either have the good IP or market it correctly. I don't know if you guys played Quantum Break. It's actually a very good game. I think people were confused with how the game was going to play with the TV episodes in between. And so maybe some people were put off like, oh, I don't want to play a movie or something like that. And it felt like they didn't market it well enough, and so that kind of hurt it. Also, they kind of let Remedy run with it, and the production was way too high. I think they spent $100+ million on that game as well. No, they got to have the single player experiences. And if you're not going to make them yourself with your first party studios, get some AA second party studios out there to make some solid ones. Cuphead, even though it's exclusive to PC and Xbox, it's not first party. It's a second party game that's exclusive. And I would consider it a AA game. At least have more of those. If you're not going to have the high quality AAAs like Sony has, that's fine. But at least go out and get some good, solid, exclusive AA games. Maybe have twice as many. Then you could say, yeah, well, we've got these exclusives as well. But first, single player experiences are always going to be important. Not everybody games online. Not everybody likes to be socially interactive. Believe it or not, even though we're in the 21st century, 2017, there are introverts still out there who only want to play with themselves.
Well,
right?
that's me.
So
that's me through high school too. I just wanted to play with myself, but I learned later that it's better with other people. But I still now I want to play by myself.
But yes, there's always going to be a market for single player games. And if they think that that's not the case, if any of them think that that's not the case, then they're 100% wrong. And they will end up regretting it in the long run. So you got to have something for both types of gamers.
Okay, I agree with that. Hopefully they'll bring more single player games. Cuphead, you brought it up. It's a great example where I keep bringing it up. You don't need to be spending millions and millions of dollars to create a good single player game. Cuphead already sold over 1 million copies, and they already made that money back and made a lot of money. So Microsoft could take that more of an approach, making smaller games. I'll bet you Mario Odyssey is already sold at 2 million in 3 days. Nintendo already ranked the money because that's not a huge development cost for Mario Odyssey. I just wish developers have more of a balance. You want to create 1 or 2 AAA games, really expensive, really high budget, but bring those smaller titles like Ubisoft tried to do, which Child. Anyway, I forgot the name. Child of Light.
Child of Light.
My point to that is that publishers, instead of putting loot boxes up the ass like they're doing now, could balance more, just having less high expensive budget, big budget games, and just bring some smaller titles to the equation than fucking loot boxes. I hate those fucking things.
And you mentioned a game, that's even more than Cuphead's an embodiment of that.
Oh yeah.
Hellblade.
Yep.
So a Sacrifice. It is technically a AA game, but it looks and plays like a AAA game. I mean, I haven't played it personally, but from every review I've read, you would look at this and you would think to yourself, that is a AAA game, but it's not a AAA game. It plays like one, looks like one, but it had a AA budget and it was self-published. And that shows you that it can be done without loot boxes and without spending $100 million. A quality game can be made. And not every game has to look photorealistic. Look at the PS3. Some of its biggest games were, I don't want to say low budget because it's not the right thing to say, but Journey was a huge, successful game, but it's not a huge game. It's not a AAA game, and it didn't cost hundreds of $millions to make. So the experiences are out there. I think most of these companies have gotten stuck in the rut of, just like movie studios, they feel they have to have that tentpole attraction. Yeah. And unfortunately, sometimes they put $100 million into something and it flops. And then you have someone like, yeah. So, but yeah, and then you got studios that suffer because of these bad publisher decisions.
Yep.
Rest in peace, Mr. Games. So it sucks, but yeah. So they're out there. That's why I think a lot of people latch on to indie games, because a lot of the indie games are that single player experience now. And if the big publishers and makers want to keep doing the multiplayer and loot box, they're going to end up losing their market share to the indie games that get published on their systems.
Yep, I agree. I don't have any other questions, Caleones, unless you have something else to finish the night today.
No, I mean, he's Boomer has pretty much covered everything, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted him to be part of here because sometimes when we do Force In Unison live, it's a little unbalanced because Dantes he's very big on Sony, even though he does like Nintendo. I'm very big on Nintendo, and we've always wanted to have that third person to kind of like calibrate and balance everything. So hopefully. Yeah, so hopefully, Boomer, this is not going to be the last time that we're going to have you over here. Some days, especially when there's big news for Xbox and Microsoft, to have you featured over here. So I do really appreciate you being over here, and just glad to get your insight on everything.
No problem.
It's a pleasure. Hopefully, someday Caleones and you will do the Xbox podcast. You can have Uncle Phil in the house. I don't know. That's big dreams. Anyway, let's close this show. It was fun. Even I have to say about myself here, not being a big Xbox gamer, that it was good to have a different perspective on the third pillar. Like I was joking, the balance in the force. But let's end the show tonight. And I pressed the wrong button, so here we go. We're off to a rocky start. Where's that? Come on. Oh, there we go. That's the ending song. There we go. That's what happens when you do all the controls and hosts at the same time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Force In Unison live right here at the Force In Unison gaming channel. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment so you can make these two crazy MFs happy. Also remember, we do have a Nintendo podcast called the Get In and Get Out Nintendo Podcast every Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can download that podcast for free on SoundCloud and iTunes. Rate us over there so you can show us some love. Also, we do have a small Facebook page called Force In Unison Gaming. And finally, and Dantes says finally, go to chiguerosnews.com and give some clicks and love to my boy Caleones. With all that said, thank you again. Long live gaming. See you guys.
Good night, everyone.